Hey everybody, welcome to Matt Connarton Unleashed. I'm your host, Matt Connarton, here for the television edition of the show. And if you're watching live on Wednesday, we just finished up Ward 13 with John Hopwood. And thank you to John for having me on again this week. And our guest was Joe LaChance. And Joe is sticking around with us for Matt Connarton Unleashed. So Joe, welcome back.
Thank you for having me back. I appreciate coming on again.
How you been? It's been, I haven't seen you in 2 minutes, I think.
Not much has changed in the past 2 minutes, but in the past 2 months a lot happened.
Yes. Well, you are. So we should first mention, and of course, you've got your sign. We should mention your campaign.
Yes, I'm a current state representative out of Ward 1 here in Manchester. I serve on the Ways and Means Committee. Very, very involved. Probably in Concord 4 days a week. Most of the time while we're in session. I ran for school board at large this past election here for the city. I was very, very humbled with the amount of votes that came in. I think I got somewhere around 4,900 votes, or a little under 5,000. So citywide on such a budget that was all of $1,400 and fully declared, I am proud of that. And it makes me realize that I love my state representative job, and it is where I belong.
Yeah, absolutely. And talk to us a little bit, and then I want to continue our conversation that we were having on Ward 13 about Rand. But talk to us a little bit about where we are with the marijuana legislation and all of that, and kind of give us an update, because we talked about that a lot last time you were on.
Sure. Well, let's circle back a couple months ago. I think the last time you and I had a conversation on the show, I had actually filed a lawsuit as a qualified patient, or a soon-to-be qualified patient, for a medical marijuana card.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't. In 2013, the governor signed off on the medical marijuana law, and fast forward to 2015, nobody was able to acquire their legally acquirable cannabis,
which is frustrating.
And the most important thing is the card. You can go into other states as long as you meet the requirements of their program. It's reciprocal, and that's what the legislators wanted when they came up with this program. The idea was not to make it such a strict program that it's just New Hampshire and 4 people can get a card.
Right.
It was a program to help people who are in pain, who need it, and for people who come to the live free or die state to take a vacation, or for a short term, extended vacation.
Right.
And I just don't get it. So fast forward to last month, there was a lady, Ms. Horan, out of, I want to say the Seacoast. She followed up to our lawsuit that requested the courts to actually issue the card. She's within 4 months of dying, God bless her soul, and she doesn't want to take opioids, and she really just wants to have the last 4 months possibly of her life to be pain-free on cannabis. And the state said no. The governor said no. The attorney general said no. So fortunately, we had a justice in Merrimack County court that said yes, and said, no, this is a compassionate law. This is the exact reason why this legislature did. Enough of this crap that's going on between the governors and the attorney general's office. Issue the cards, and it was pretty neat to see his ruling. Show me Maine will give her cannabis. Basically was the burden. Show me that Maine will provide cannabis to her, and I'll issue the card. It was pretty much that ultimatum.
Yeah.
She provided that. The order came down, precedent setting. So I'm waiting for my card.
Yeah.
Many qualified patients are waiting for the card.
Absolutely. I mean, it's really just a matter of compassion and empathy, really. And, I always say, and actually we mentioned too, because I was furious about this on Ward 13. We were talking a little bit about that. I forget the guy's name. The head of the DEA, who's the interim head, talking about medical marijuana being a joke, and there's nothing to support. There's no evidence to support that it has any value, which of course that's fine if you ignore the mountains of evidence and research that have been done that it shows it clearly does.
Or lack thereof, because we've intentionally made sure that we couldn't do this research.
Right. Just another sociopathic bureaucrat, know. Just awful stuff. But I want to talk a little presidential politics with you because you're a Rand guy, and we talked a little bit about that on John's show about you went to the Bernie Sanders rally with the sign, the Rand sign, and talked to people, and there was an area of agreement.
It was very interesting. On Sunday here in Manchester, they had the Democratic Jefferson Jackson dinner, and I just like politics. I wanted to see what was going on, and I knew there were some people that were going to go and hold some signs, and I'm not a nasty kind of guy, so you're not going to see me holding I hate this or I hate that or whatever.
Right.
But I was proud to hold my Rand sign.
Yeah.
And when I got to that dinner, and I got about an hour and a half before the dinner, there must have been 500 Bernie Sanders people out there. Now,
are you sure? Because I heard Trump say there were thousands. Little joke there.
In New Jersey.
Yes, there were thousands in New Jersey. Yes.
Just amazing. We could talk about where they came from. And I think this needs to be talked about.
Yeah.
There were Vermont buses. There were Mass plates. There were New York plates.
Sure.
One of the reasons for me I wanted to see what was going on. So I made some observations, and the observations were they bust these people in from out of town.
Yeah.
Not everybody.
Right.
Not everybody.
Right.
But the interesting part was the Hillary people, if I were to walk through the Hillary crowd with my Rand sign, I would get nasty comments, go home, you don't belong here, weird comments. You go to the Bernie side of the house, what's up, dude?
Yeah.
What's up? What's going on? It was very surreal going, because politically, we're pretty much polar opposites, except on some items that, because I lean libertarian, that I see eye to eye with him on.
Yeah.
And some of the comments from the people in that sea of Bernie supporters were, well, if Bernie doesn't make it and Rand does, I'm going to vote for Rand. It was very neat to see that. Very hard for me to understand that as well.
Yeah.
Because I wonder how educated these folks are on the issues, because it's often hard to cross party lines, as I know recently how that works.
Right.
So quickly and so easily.
Right.
It was a breath of fresh air for me being a Rand supporter, knowing that the Bernie people appreciate that Rand Paul is not a warmonger.
Right.
He is not, let's get these BAE systems and Lockheed and everybody, let's get them the big contracts and make some more war machines and let's get going.
Yeah.
You don't build a country on a war, per se. You have to defend your country, or else you'll lose it, and I get that.
Yeah.
But, I think Rand's stance right now on protecting the homeland and taking care of some of our internal issues may be the better way, instead of being the world police. And I'm not saying I would not go to war. That's not what I'm saying. I'm an army guy. I'm a military guy.
Yeah.
That's what my early training in life was. I was taught to kill people.
Right.
Literally, that's what we did.
Right.
I was trained for war, and now's not the time.
Well, I've said from the beginning that I thought, and I don't believe there's any chance of Rand Paul being the nominee. I think it's going to be Trump. But I've said from the beginning that it would be fascinating to see Rand versus Hillary in the general election, because in terms of foreign policy, typically, although I think Democrats and Republicans are kind of the same at this point in history in terms of lust for war, for lack of a better way of putting it. But Hillary, I think, is essentially a neocon. I think she would have been very comfortable in the George W. Bush administration as part of that foreign policy team, whereas Rand Paul clearly is not. I do think, now let me ask you this, though. Do you feel like Rand has maybe made some concessions in terms of his rhetoric, because he recognizes that you can't be as dovish as he has appeared to be and have any chance at winning the nomination, because occasionally I have heard him say things like, well, yeah, we should be fighting ISIS, and sounds like maybe he's buying in a little bit to this idea that, well, if we don't fight them over there, we're going to have to fight them here, which I think is absurd. But, I mean, how do you feel about that?
His stance on war, I think he may have changed. I think he may have, and I think the world changes every day. I mean,
Yeah.
ISIS, I mean, listen, President Obama said they were just JV 4 days ago, and now they're
Yeah.
the leading terrorist group. So I think the entire situation is fluid, but I still think you're seeing a very cautious and concerned Rand Paul. Now, I think if we had to fight ISIS, and push came to shove, make no mistake about it, I think Rand Paul at the end of the day would make the right decision if it was good for America, and it had to be done. And I think you and I would both agree. I mean, I don't think he'd crawl into a foxhole and cover his head and
Right.
just let America. That's not what Rand Paul is about.
Right.
Rand Paul is a revolutionary. Just doesn't want to take that revolution into other countries, into other wars that might have been started or actually financed through our own intervention. If you look at
absolutely.
how ISIS was funded, if you look at some of these news reports that are coming in, they're driving our MRAP vehicles that we gave to our supposed friends over
Yep.
there.
Yep.
So George W. Bush, President Bush, did not do us any favors. And to further it, to make it even worse, when President Obama got elected, he decided to continue doing what Bush was doing, but at a lot lower level, and it just created chaos, terror, financing of terror, and here we are today.
I would say, in some ways, a lower level in terms of bringing troops home from Iraq and so forth, but in other ways, ratcheting it up, like with the drone strikes. And then, I'm sure you saw this, I think it was a couple of months ago, the government's own numbers. I think the Pentagon acknowledged that 90% of these people killed in drone attacks are not the targets. They're collateral damage, if that's the term you want to use. And, I think we're locked into a situation now where I say all the time, there's generations of kids growing up in Afghanistan who have no idea what the hell 9/11 is. They don't know why we're there. They don't know why we're killing their friends and their family. And all they know is that the Americans are these people with these flying machines called drones that they're using to murder everybody. So why does America hate us? They don't get it.
They don't get it. And,
Yeah.
and then think back to 1980. I did a little research on it. And do we remember why we boycotted the Olympic Games in 1980? Because of the Afghanistan intervention by Russia. Mm-hmm. So isn't it ironic? We go from 1980,
Yeah.
and now we're in 2015, and we're the guys that were in there.
Yeah.
And causing the problems. And now Russia's coming back in. Listen, I don't claim to be any sort of international political guy, but I certainly follow it. And I'm certainly afraid of what's going on over there. And I
Yeah.
think whether you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian, whatever you are, I think you have a right to be afraid.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that hate America.
Yeah. Blowback, I believe, is the term that Ron Paul used to use. And we create more terrorists. Clearly, we created ISIS by invading Iraq, disbanding the Iraqi army. And then where did all those weapons end up? Well, we know who has them now because, like you said, they're using our own weapons against us.
Against
and we gave
us.
them. Yeah.
Our own money, our own blood money,
Yeah.
is killing our own blood.
Yep. I believe, not to get conspiratorial because I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I believe that there's an intention here. When Bush first invaded Iraq, Bush and Cheney and Rumsfeld and the whole gang, and then clearly the invasion went very well, but the occupation clearly began to fall apart pretty early. It descended into chaos reasonably quickly. And I thought, well, they were just arrogant. They didn't plan for this part. I see it differently now. I still think they were arrogant, but I think it's not that I think they knew what was going to happen, and I think the idea was to get bogged down because war is a business, very profitable for certain people. And we know Cheney and Rumsfeld specifically have been able to benefit from that.
Halliburton.
Absolutely. And, I think it's intentional. I think that, Eisenhower warned us about the military-industrial complex. I think he was the first one to use that phrase publicly, though I'm not sure. And again, I get self-conscious talking about it because I don't want to come off like a conspiracy guy because I know the conspiracy theorists have kind of co-opted that term. I kind of want to take it back because I do believe the military-industrial complex is a real thing. I think that we're a war-based economy. It's our greatest export. And, because here's the thing. Here's how I look at it. I've never served in the military. I've never served in government. I've never been Secretary of State or Secretary of Defense. There is nothing in my background that would suggest that I should be able to figure this all out. And yet somehow I was able to foresee. I mean, I think I'm a reasonably bright guy, but I'm no genius. And yet I could foresee how badly this was all going to go. Okay, so a bunch of Saudis fly planes into our buildings and we're invading Iraq and Afghanistan. And it's all very sketchy and weird. And I don't quite understand the logic behind this. This is all going to go very badly and we're going to get bogged in. How did I foresee that? And yet people with all this experience and knowledge and wisdom couldn't foresee that. Why is it that I have been correct about all of it right along?
See, war by proxy, I think is the word of the day out there.
Right.
And I think the problem is nobody envisioned that these oil prices were going to just drop, just actually bottom out.
Yeah.
You almost wonder, what if OPEC would have been able to keep that price of oil instead of $55 a barrel? What if it was back up to $100 a barrel or more? You almost wonder what would be happening if they had the money out there, right?
Yeah.
You're right. Listen, I'm a rational libertarian leaning guy,
Yeah.
but you have to look at things and wonder why.
Yeah.
How come? And you know what? I think we owe it to ourselves to ask questions like that. Why?
I think too that they, and this is kind of something I just kind of realized recently. I think they played it very smart. They played the American public very smart with this because if this is assuming for the moment that my theory is correct, that this was all intentional and they knew exactly what they were doing. Because on the one hand, they certainly, the attitude right after 9/11 with the ramp up to these invasions was very much, you're with us or you're against us. And if you're against us doing this, then you don't want to stand up for America and you're with the terrorists, etc. So they played that card very well. But I think also people who were against the war, what's one of the phrases we always hear? People will say, no blood for oil. This is all about oil. And we can't be sending our brave men and women off to die for oil. And that's the real motivation. I think they were counting on people who opposed the war taking that narrative because that was a distraction from, because I think what it's really about is the war profiteering, not the oil. The oil would be great to have, sure. But I think if the real reason for doing this is war profiteering and you've got the anti-war crowd distracted with this idea that it's all about oil, brilliant. If I'm right and that's really, I'll give them credit for that. It's evil, but it's brilliant.
One heck of a marketing strategy.
A
So
lot of distraction and
sure.
And and I think we're just kind of locked in. And I also think, see, if President Obama, let's say he were to, because I think all these people, including him, have a lot of blood on their hands. Because like you said, he's just continued, the Bush doctrine. If he came out and gave a policy speech tomorrow and said, look, we've decided we're going to pull back. Instead of doubling down, tripling down, we're going to pull back. We're going to begin to withdraw from the Middle East because we feel that we're actually creating more terrorists than we can possibly kill. And this is all a bad idea. You would have, and with respect to your party, because I understand you are a Republican, but first of all, you would have Republicans everywhere pointing at him going, see, we told you, he's weak. He doesn't really care about America. He's surrendering to the terrorists. He's appeasing them. And you'd have a lot of Democrats, frankly, pro-war Democrats saying
absolutely.
that as well.
Yes.
And so even though I think that would be the right thing for him to do that, it wouldn't fly. They'd be calling for his impeachment because there's this, nationalism / jingoism in this country that, even if it's a smart thing to pull back, it doesn't feel right to a lot of people. It feels like we're surrendering, we're giving in.
Right. And, he's done that over the course of his, if he didn't have his drones, he'd be in a quandrum because he would have to have some sort of ground fight or air fight.
Right.
And, if he can use bombs via drone versus via F-10 or whatever it is flying above, he's going to do it with the drone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as a military guy, does it frustrate you when you hear this stuff about, well, we're not going to put boots on the ground? You hear that phrase a lot. We're not going to put ground forces there, knowing that there are ground forces there. There's already special forces guys there, and they try to spin it, right? Like, oh, they're advising or they're training whoever they think
They're lying.
Yeah,
They're lying.
Yeah.
You can call it what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you're in hostile territory, I don't care if you're a cook or if you're an 11 Bravo infantry guy or a Special Forces Ranger.
Yeah.
You're in harm's way.
Yeah.
And when you send 50 people, when you should be sending 50,000. And listen, I'm not advocating for 50,000.
Right,
but I'm
right.
giving an example here.
Yeah.
When you putting 50 people in harm's way is just as bad as putting 50,000 in harm's way.
Mm-hmm.
You either do it or you don't. That's my philosophical reasoning on it. And that's why, frankly, I back Rand, because I think he would think long and hard. I think he would not allow the war industry, the war machine, make the decision for him.
Yeah.
There are times war has to happen.
Yeah.
We're a society. It's history happens. It continues to happen.
Yeah.
But I think he would have more of a sensible, rational approach to it.
Right.
And listen, I'm not an anti-war guy.
Yeah.
I'm a veteran.
Yeah.
I want to defend our country. I believe in defending our country, but I don't believe in being the world's police.
Right. Yeah, I get frustrated when I hear, well, we're just sending these guys to train rebels or whoever, and it just sounds like more of the same. It's just more of this, how do you figure out who the good guys and the bad guys are, and this and that. And also, too, I think of Vietnam when, JFK said, we're going to send in these advisors to train the South Vietnamese how to do these bombing missions. They won't be in combat. They'll just be advising. And the next thing you know, who's flying the missions, and then it just escalates from there. So,
You hate to say your government lies to you, but I'm here to tell you your government lies to you.
Absolutely.
Your government does lie to you.
Absolutely.
Trust but verify.
And I will say, Rand Paul, yeah, he's the only one on that stage at the Republican debates who sounds to me remotely close to what I would like to see in terms of foreign policy. The rest of them, it's just war. Got to fight more war. More war.
You know what's intriguing about that stage? You had talked about the Republican stage that's up there and who's on there. And I agree with you, by the way, with Rand.
Yeah.
But, I think this is going to be a very interesting presidential election. I'm not... Listen, Rand is not at 27% right now, so
Yeah.
I tend to agree with where you're at. But in my heart, in my mind, in my beliefs, I'm going to back my candidate.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to back down because that's my principle.
Yeah.
But for the life of me, I don't understand why there's a lot of talent. Whether we call that talent good or bad, on that stage, there's a bunch of talent.
I like John Kasich.
There's a lot of talent.
Yeah.
And if somebody would just be able to get away from saying, I have to be the president.
Right.
But if they could all say, we're a team now.
Right.
I'm going to be president. I'm vice president. Here's your secretary of defense. Come out with the entire plan to the whole people right up front. This is what we're doing.
That would be interesting.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I think that would win it. I cannot believe the Republicans have not done that. But again, everybody wants to be the leader of the free world, so they don't want to come in second. So
Yeah. Well, plus you got one guy sucking all the energy out of the whole thing.
that's true.
Or the air out of the whole thing. Yeah. And I believe he'll be the nominee. And I've been making the prediction, and I take no joy in saying this because I'm not a Hillary supporter, and I know it's awfully early and a lot can change, but I've been saying unless something happens to really change the direction of this thing, what I foresee is Trump being the nominee and Hillary Clinton being the next president, because again, unless there's a big course correction here, I don't see how Trump loses the nomination, and I don't see how he wins the presidency. And Hillary, I believe, will be the next president, not because she will have beaten Trump, but because Trump will have beaten himself, because he's saying all the right things to mobilize the conservative base of the party. And meanwhile, when he gets to the general election, Hispanics aren't going to vote for him, the fastest growing demographic in this country. Muslims aren't going to vote for him. He's upset a lot of women, I'm sure. We'll see who else he offends by the time he gets there. And I think it's going to be Hillary.
I may take a different stance on that than you. but I'm not sure yet. I still think, as you, it's still fluid and it could change. But Trump, I've noticed in the past couple of weeks, has taken a more gentle approach, if you could say, on some of the ways that he's talking.
Yeah.
So his handlers are probably doing a decent job with that.
Yeah.
You know, the funny thing about Trump, I'm not a Trump guy. And I'll tell you right now, if it comes down to Trump or Hillary, I'm voting for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
I will hold my nose and do that.
Right.
You know,
right.
this is actually, when I say hold my nose, there's a lot of stuff about Donald Trump that I do like.
Me too, actually.
There's a lot of stuff that I like.
Yeah, yeah.
But America is such a TV, we're such a social media, and if the Don continues to be the you're fired guy,
Yeah.
I think he might get it.
Yeah.
I think he could beat Hillary if he if he can stop insulting people.
Right.
But
right.
you know what? Insulting the people right now is working for him.
It
His
is.
numbers are going up.
It is.
His
yeah.
numbers are going up.
Yeah.
It was, I think it's 27 now or 29. And
Yeah, it's
always
incredible.
creeping up. It's
yeah.
not going down.
There's really no reason for him to change at this stage.
The one
of
that
the game.
crept up that scares the living bejesus out of me is Chris Christie.
Yeah.
Chris Christie had got, I think, an 8-point rise from the Ted Gazette endorsement.
Ted Gazette, yeah.
Listen,
That won't stick, though. Well, I mean, don't they? I mean, whoever they endorse, the New Hampshire union leader, for those who don't know what we're talking about, I mean, doesn't that have just like a very sort of short-term effect? He got a bump, and then everybody kind of forgets.
He got a bump, but let's look at the totality of everything. They get the worst record. I mean, if you look back at like the last 6 cycles on who they picked,
They endorsed Gingrich last time.
You might as well endorse Bart Simpson because,
Yeah.
Anyway, Chris Christie, he says some things that I like.
Yeah.
But he's in law enforcement's back pocket. He is reefer madness.
Oh, yeah.
He has come right out and said that any state that has legalized marijuana, both legally or medically, I'm coming after you. Guess what? You're not winning any votes with that, Chris Christie.
No.
You're not winning any votes, and I will do what I have to do to expose you, Chris Christie.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And there's a lot of folks out here that are on this team, and I've reached out to Chris, to Governor Christie. I had somebody reach me back and said we're going to set up a meeting with you to just have a marijuana summit.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I would appreciate that.
Yeah.
I got a story to tell him, and you know what? We may not agree on legalization of cannabis, but could you at least come across the table and have a sensible discussion about medical marijuana and the study and use of CBDs in these children that are having seizures or whatever issue that are taking CBDs for the first time, and within hours their symptoms have gone away.
Yeah.
You know, what kind of man, what kind of father would not allow their child a cure to something
Right.
that medical Pfizer or the big pharma can't cure,
Right.
but a natural plant that grows in the backyard could. Chris Christie, you need to come around, Governor Christie, because in New Hampshire, we're not going to let you get elected here.
I wonder if it's not to make excuses for him, because there is no excuse, but I wonder if, as a former federal prosecutor, it's just locked in there in his brain and he can't.
Listen, and in fairness, I've had the same discussion with Senator Kelly Ayotte.
Yeah.
I've been a long supporter of Senator Kelly Ayotte. We do not agree on several issues, but she's with me on 90% of my issues.
Yeah.
Maybe 90 is a little high lately, but again, I'd rather have somebody on my side that's 90%
Right.
than 20%.
Right.
And the last I went to a meeting with Kelly, Senator Ayotte, about 4 months ago, and we continued the dialogue on sensible medical marijuana.
Yeah.
And as long as she continues to listen, to educate, and not to shut down, I'll continue that conversation.
Yeah.
But, it's a lot of work. It's such an issue that's just a ton of work that needs to be get done. People are so misinformed out there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We're at the midway point, Joe. Do you need to go, or can you stay?
Stick around. I'll stick around.
Cool. All right, cool. That's great. Yeah, Kelly Ayotte, I have to compliment her on something that when she introduced, I don't think it passed. I kind of lost track of this. When she introduced a bill to basically eliminate the threat of government shutdown. No more government shutdowns to try to for Republicans to try to get their way on whether it be Planned Parenthood or whatever. And I applauded her for that. And I know she upset many people in her own party on that. I don't know how you feel about that, but personally, I don't think government shutdowns are a great idea.
It costs us money in the end.
Trillions of dollars.
We're giving free vacations, and we're hurting the public.
Exactly.
I mean, look at last time the president made a political spectacle out of the shutdown. Our veterans couldn't visit their wall that they fought for, that their brothers died for.
Yeah.
And here we got President Obama putting a fence up. You can't come see your wall, veteran. Guess what? That's the type of stuff that has to stop.
Right.
I mean, when you start getting that petty, that personal, you need to move on.
Yeah.
And when I saw that was disgusting. So I too would commend her.
Yeah.
It did not pass.
Yeah. I want to get back to Hillary for a second because I want to add a caveat to my theory. We are talking about the Clintons. So even though I think, again, unless something changes, I think it's going to be Hillary. The one thing that did occur to me, and I mentioned this last night on my radio show, is because we're talking about the Clintons, there could be a scandal. And I'm not talking about Benghazi because, I mean, people are already very fatigued with that at this point already. And I'm not condoning or excusing anything in terms of her or the State Department on that. I'm just saying that, these things have a shelf life. But there could be a November surprise or an October surprise, which could throw the election to Trump. But I think other than that, that's the only way he wins. But because you're a Republican, let me ask you this, because I've also been talking about something that I call the Hillary paradox, in that, so Republicans generally loathe her. I know you're someone who doesn't like to make politics personal, but there does seem to be, among, I would say probably most Republicans I know, there's just this intense personal loathing of Hillary Clinton. But what's interesting to me about that is she's, in my estimation, she's no liberal. And I feel like in terms of, if you compare her to Hillary or Martin O'Malley, who's still in the race, not that Martin O'Malley barely registers, but if you compare Hillary, I think, to your typical modern Democrat, whereas the party has drifted so far left, and I think you see that in both directions with both parties to a large extent, Hillary Clinton is probably, if you're a Republican and you're going to get stuck with a Democrat in the White House, Hillary's probably the one you want to get stuck with in terms of, fiscal policy and in terms of her foreign policy. In a lot of ways, I mean, if she governs anything like her husband did, and I suspect that she will, she's no liberal. She's no left-winger. If anything, on foreign policy, I think she's right of center. I mean, what do you think about that?
Again, I'm not a conspiracy kind of guy, and I do an awful lot of reading. So
there's
two parts to this. I've read a lot about the Clintons and their past. Some of it you got to take it with a grain of salt, but you read the stuff that's out there.
Right.
And the stuff that continues to be out there that's legitimately written into books and out there for published, you have to put some credence into.
Yeah.
And I'm appalled by the way Hillary Clinton treats the people that work for her, or work for her, I should say. When I was reading some of the stuff that she had done to either the Secret Service or some of the employees and the way she treats them, it was just amazing to me to see that. So on a personal level, I automatically was like, I just cannot believe this woman, this mother, this wife treats people this way.
Yeah.
If it's true, I'll take it for what it's worth. But if it's continued to be pounded into books by people on both sides, you got to think something of that might be true.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, in the back of my mind, you are very right. I think there's a big difference between Hillary and Obama. Mm-hmm. I truly, there's a huge fundamental difference there.
Yeah.
And I almost wonder in the back, it wouldn't benefit Obama to have Trump as the next president one bit.
Right. Or
would it? Because what if he allows an indictment of Hillary to go through in the November surprise for the server scandal or whatever they're withholding there?
Sure.
You let Trump come on in, or whoever the Republican is. The conspiracy theories just continue to go on and on.
Sure.
And the big thing is, what if Hillary Clinton broke the law?
Right.
What's the president going to do about it? That's interesting to me.
It is, yeah.
And it's an out there thought.
It's possible. An indictment is possible, yeah.
Boy,
I don't think it's likely.
I would agree with you.
But it would be interesting, wouldn't it?
I would agree with you. Again, doing a lot of reading and just kind of looking at things. Do I think it's going to happen? No. Could it happen? The FBI does operate on a little bit of, not a little bit, they're on their own. I mean, they don't take orders from the president.
Right,
So,
right.
If somebody's hell-bent to get an indictment out of the FBI, they should be successful in court. But who knows?
Yeah.
Again, it's just interesting to think about.
Yeah.
It's going to be an interesting 9 months, huh?
Yeah.
It's going to be an interesting 9 months.
Absolutely. Do you think there's any chance of Hillary not being the nominee in your estimation?
Yeah. I really do.
You do?
I really do.
You think Bernie can potentially knock her down?
If that November surprise comes.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is you look at some of the other places where Bernie's not doing as well.
Right.
And that's where his demise will be, you know?
Yeah.
But if something were to come out on Hillary, I mean, you could almost conceivably see that. And at that point, I would want Trump as my president before Bernie Sanders is my president.
Right. Because my theory is I think Bernie could win New Hampshire and Iowa and say, but like we talked about on John's show earlier, South Carolina, once you get to the South, you know, they're not going to vote for the socialist from Vermont with the Brooklyn accent, you know.
Unless something comes forward.
Yeah.
Could O'Malley be the surprise? Who knows? But I mean, he's polling less than.
Oh yeah,
he's got 0.0 something compared to like what. You know, that's the other thing with what they're doing with Rand Paul. I mean, the media is just stifling him.
Yeah.
Every poll, they're not putting him in the polls.
Yeah.
He's polling better than what some of the 2%ers are report that they're just on purpose.
Yeah.
Omitting Rand Paul from a lot of these polls.
It's interesting that I think it might have been, it all blurs together. I think it was less than a year ago that, maybe it was more than a year ago that he was on the cover of, I think it was Time, and and the cover said the most interesting man in politics.
Yes.
I think. Yeah.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Do you were you a Ron Paul supporter?
Yeah. That's where I kind of started to get my libertarian leanings.
Really?
I started to learn more about, like, why do I think the way I think, or I started seeing some things within my own party that I didn't agree with, and with the Democratic Party that I didn't agree with, that I needed to make peace with myself in order to, if I want to be part of the political process, I needed to understand it. I needed to understand why I thought this way, how I thought this way, and that's how it happens.
Would you support as a and this is never going to happen, but it's just an interesting thought exercise. As a state legislator, would you support repealing, I don't want to get this wrong, the 17th Amendment, I think, so that the state legislature would vote and choose who our congressmen are rather than having the people vote.
Interesting you said that. If you pull up my record, that bill actually came through.
It did.
That bill came. Give me a couple seconds.
No kidding.
Because it's interesting. I voted for it.
No kidding.
I wanted
Okay.
the legislature to be able, because we're such a large.
Yeah.
We're 400 members, and the folks who live in Ward 1, the north end of Manchester, know I'm accessible.
Yeah.
I get phone calls every day. I get emails every day. I go to hearings. I go to court. I really take pride in what I do.
Yeah.
And
Well, give me your argument for that. Because when I first heard this idea, and again, it's never going to happen, but when I first heard this idea, I thought, I don't know if that works, because aren't you disenfranchising people?
But are you? But they're electing you, and
Right.
and I represent about 10,000 people. There's myself and another representative for Ward 1, and I thought it was a way to get the vote to the people instead of having to spend all this money in advertising and
Right.
you can so if I but then you there's some cronyism you got to be careful about too, because then if
Right.
you're going to run, you're going to endorse this person. I mean, I get it. I thought the way it was presented to me, it sounded like it was a pretty decent plan, and it may work. It was a change in the political voting structure. People still had the say. Their elected officials did it.
Right.
I guess I found it intriguing. I could go either way with it.
Yeah.
But, I thought it was an interesting way to look at electing our senators.
What did a lot of people vote for that? Or?
No, it did not pass. It did not pass.
Okay.
Actually, the liberty-minded people did.
Okay.
It was
right.
it was the liberty. I want to say maybe there's 100 votes that went for that.
Okay.
It really was the liberty-minded people.
Okay. Now, have you always been a Republican?
I'm a recovering Democrat.
You are? Okay, because I thought
grew
I
up-
heard you mention something earlier about...
Long time ago.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking years.
Yeah.
I grew up in a Democratic household.
Yeah.
I really was never interested in politics. I went to the military. I had to learn my chain of command. I knew what the president was. I mean, I went to high school and I knew my civics and everything, but I never really understood politics.
Yeah.
I was a Democrat because I was born a Democrat.
Right.
I didn't know any different.
Yeah.
And I think as my parents got older, they started becoming more conservative.
Okay.
And then I started to see the light. But I was the first one to go. It was actually, it's funny, my parents, my father, God rest his soul, he passed away in 2012 during my first election campaign.
Wow. Yeah.
And he was a Democrat his whole life, and he died a Republican.
Oh, no kidding. That's interesting.
He was an independent voter, and he chose to make his final ballot a Republican ballot. And
interesting. Yeah,
that's awesome.
I was a Democrat up until mid 2000s, and then I became an independent. And actually, since moving to Manchester, I'm now once again registered as a Democrat only because I really try to fight against the two-party system and support independence as much as possible. But everybody's told me, including most of my Republican friends, a lot of people have encouraged me to run for office, and they've all said, you should register as a Democrat because you can't get elected as an independent, and I don't.
I almost pulled it off
I remember you saying that.
I ran.
Yeah.
So in that 2012 election, I wasn't prepared. I knew I was libertarian leaning.
Yeah.
I knew I had some Democratic roots. I knew I was getting pulled to that Republican Party because on the social issues, you could just call me a Democrat. Just get the government out of my life.
Right.
Get out of my bedroom. Just get the government out of my life. I mean, it's just that simple.
Yeah.
On the social issues, bye. On the fiscal issues, well, I have some concern. If you're going to run your country into trillions and trillions of debt, we're going to be Rome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where the balance is. So, I have some of my Republican friends that says, wow, it's kind of like a Democratic view of it. Well, I kind of take a whole big picture view. So to go back to the first time I ran, so I kind of knew I had to pick a party, but I wanted to test it.
Yeah.
Ward 1's a very purple ward.
Okay.
There's about 3,000 independents, about 3,000 Republicans, and 3,000 Democrats.
Wow.
So as a ballot access in New Hampshire is problematic to begin with. And that's something I've been looking at as a liberty-minded candidate. Why does Joe LaChance have a hard time getting on the ballot just because he doesn't want to call himself a Republican?
Yeah.
But again, I don't always play normal.
Right.
I always will take a challenge.
Yeah.
And I read the law, and I read that I had to go out and get some petitions signed, and so I did that. I actually got 300 petitions, and I registered as a undeclared.
Okay.
And I almost pulled it off.
Yeah. Wow.
It actually went to a recount. The only reason why I lost to Peter Ramsey, Democrat, in the ward, but I may have the numbers wrong. But the union leader versus what the city reported on their websites were two different numbers.
Really?
And it was so close at that point where something just didn't smell right.
Yeah.
So I had called for a recount and went to Concord, did a recount, and they found 200 votes.
Oh, really?
Out of Ward 1. It was just a tallying error. It wasn't a conspiracy. It was it was human error. That's what humans make error.
Yeah.
It did go to Peter's favor, so he beat me by 271 at that point or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But it goes to show that it could be done.
Yeah.
But it's hard to be done.
Yeah.
I would have won that election if I'd have ran as a Republican.
Yeah.
So it's very important for me in my ward. I understand the politics of my ward.
Yeah.
My ward is very different than Ward 9. My ward is very different than Ward 12. People can argue with me until the moon turns blue, but I won last time, and I got a good showing this time.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of work for my people.
Yeah.
If you're a Democrat, I will write you a letter. I will send you a card. I'm getting ready. I will hopefully fundraise enough money shortly. I want to give a report card to my entire ward to show that I've done 31 bills last year. I'm going to do 40 bills this year. So far, the governor's signed 9. I have 100% attendance record, and I serve on Ways and Means for you guys.
Yeah.
I'm here for you. I want people to be able to go vote for Joe LaChance and know that Joe's going to be up there. I'm representing Ward 1.
Yeah.
And my people know that. So, and I'm very, very happy. I'm very happy. And after this last election, to see the numbers I pulled out of my ward is really humbling and makes me want to continue to go up there 5 days a week if need be for
Yeah.
the people.
Yeah, that's excellent. Excellent. So now, are you? I want to go back to Kelly Ayotte for a minute, because you mentioned there's some things you disagree with her on, and I know that there is some energy out there to. I know there's a lot of Republicans who aren't exactly happy with her, but I'm having a little trouble getting a read on what exactly it is. Can you tell me what some of the things are where you disagree with her?
So I'm not a one issue guy.
Yeah.
But I'm a liberty issue guy, which turns one issue probably to a bazillion issues.
Right.
I think my biggest fundamental disagreement with Kelly right now, Senator Ayotte, is on sensible marijuana policy.
Yeah.
But that leads to mandatory minimums. That leads to
Right.
the prison industry. It leads to, there's just so much more. So you could say, well, this guy, all he cares about is marijuana. But if people really understood what the war on drugs is doing to this country, and they really understood that it's a war on the black community, the arrests show it. This is not a racist comment. The arrests show that the war on drugs disproportionately affects the black community, the poor community.
Good for you for saying that, because I've never in my life heard another Republican say that.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
It is. And I'm a former police officer.
Yeah.
I'm a member of Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. I'm a LEAP member. I was a 10-year police officer here in the state. I've seen people's lives ruined from a victimless crime of maybe having a 1/8 of an ounce of a vegetative matter in a Ziploc baggie, and guess what? They don't get their student loans because somebody has decided that marijuana is Schedule 1. But throw that marijuana away, but you can go into your parents' pharmaceutical supply and their medicine cabinet and get whatever you need.
Yep.
So that's my biggest problem. But you know what? I'm going to tell you, Senator Ayotte and her people have been open with me.
Yeah.
She has not changed her position,
Yeah.
but she's willing to listen. And she
Yeah.
has said that she has considered looking at it more in depth. Listen, we know she's an attorney, a former attorney general.
Right. Right.
But that doesn't give her carte blanche to be crazy on some issues.
Right.
All right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a former cop.
Yeah.
Doesn't give me a right to be crazy on police issues.
Yeah.
If we can maintain a reasonable conversation, I'm not going to agree with her everything.
Yeah.
But that's the major one. And I think that it goes into so much more. It's not
Yeah.
just that one issue. It turns into 25 issues at that point, because then you're talking prisons and police.
And with all that comes government being involved in our lives. And it's funny. I've been saying that the paradigm with the two-party system, which like I said, I try to fight against, but the paradigm that's been presented us is that Democrats are the party of big government and Republicans are the party of small government. And what I say is, I think the reality is, there are a lot of Republicans who really like government, as long as government is doing what suits their agenda.
Correct. Exactly.
And I say, yes, it's true. Democrats are definitely the party of big government. I think Republicans are the party of medium government. Libertarians are the party of small government. But there's a lot of big government. Joe Scarborough wrote a book about it. I forget what it's called, but about what he calls big government conservatism. And they like the private prisons, and they like the war on drugs, and they like government being able to be involved in your marriage and all that.
It comes down to money.
Exactly. But I commend you because I feel like you're really fighting against that big government conservatism, and I think that's great.
I'm trying to. However, there is a need for government. I mean,
oh yeah,
listen, and I think there is a certain sect of libertarianism that I could neither subscribe to nor even tolerate.
The anarchists.
The anarchist is just, listen, it's not me.
Right.
It's not me.
Yeah.
And that's not me. That's not what I would ever portray myself as. And I'd like to be called a rational, libertarian-leaning Republican.
Yeah.
You know what I'd like to see in this city? We want to see this city shaken up a little bit. It's people like you and me and the Andre Roses and the Phil Harrises and the Amanda Boldens who are running and running and running.
Yeah.
We should all run as an independent. We'd throw, if we could get everybody ballot access in every ward as a middle party candidate, you want to show Manchester, New Hampshire how we can shake up the political system? Listen,
I like that idea.
I've had people come to me to vow that they're going to primary me in Ward 1. Fine, bring it on. I'll run independent.
Yeah.
And you do that, you're not going to get your Republican seat. I'll probably win my independent seat, and you probably have you might have 2 independents in there is where I'm going.
Right.
And we need to outsmart them.
Yeah.
And we can do that.
Yeah.
Because we're better.
I like that idea. Too, and if you look at national polls, and I don't know what the numbers are here, but nationally, the last poll I saw showed, I think 42% of the electorate is independent.
Absolutely.
So there's an opportunity there.
I personally like somebody who can look beyond a party line. Listen, I have right here my House Republican office. I get my stuff from them and I read it. But don't you think I don't read the Democrat stuff either?
Yeah.
I try to get my hands on everything. I follow what I believe in my heart.
Yeah.
Rarely will I vote because I'm told to vote somewhere. The only time, 9 times out of 10 I'll do that, is if the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance has scored a bill and can prove to me where it's liberty.
Yeah.
I'm voting for it.
Yeah.
Because it's been vetted. And it's not just a bunch of cronies saying, "Hey, I got to vote for this one."
Right.
I'm taking some heat. I'm the Republican who's put a Medicaid bill in this term. Responsible Medicaid bill.
Yes.
Very responsible. And I'm not prepared to talk about it yet. I don't have my notes, and it's not the final draft. It's done, but they haven't released it yet.
Yeah.
And they're slowly trickling out now. But it's okay if they primary me. I'm doing the right thing for the people.
Yep.
Doing the right thing for my ward. And actually, I think it'd be kind of fun if I got primaried, to be honest with you. So bring it on.
Yeah. Well, listen, Joe, we're about out of time. So before we run out of time, please tell us again what we need to know about your campaign, where people should go online for that. And
sure.
Whatnot.
Actually, I'm in hiatus right now. You can reach me at joseph.lachance@aol.com. My phone number is 370-1767. I believe we're going to launch our campaign after the first of the year, and I cannot wait to come back on if I'll get the invite again.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, Joe, thank you so much. And thanks, everybody, for watching or listening. And, of course, if you're watching live on Wednesday, I will be back at 6 p.m. with the Honorable Gary S. Hopper for Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. So until then, talk at y'all later. Thanks, everybody.